Hey Denise, I think we're just about ready to get started, so Taylor will be checking with us in just a moment.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all can hear me okay. It is 2 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get us started. I am Taylor Post, Swiftland's office manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Sparkle, Relish Your Opportunities, and today's presenter, Linda Bruno. Linda has been developing and conducting training workshops for libraries and other organizations for more than 15 years. She offers workshops on topics ranging from leadership skills to returning balance and lots of areas in between. Linda received her MBA from the University of Florida and has years of experience in hands-on management positions. She develops her workshops based on solid research and, more importantly, real-life application. Please welcome Linda Bruno and enjoy her webinar this afternoon. Linda?
Thanks so much, Taylor, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's one of those Sparkle webinars that we've been presenting for you. Of course, this is the R in Sparkle, but our whole goal for this when we started talking about it last spring was to help people find the good. And so we've tried to do that with our Sparkle series. So the first question I have for you is, what did you think of when you saw the title and the description of this particular webinar? What came to mind for you? What drew you to register? I see several of you are typing. Hi, Eva. I see you there. You're fine. Brittany said I was curious as to what it would be about, and I had a free slot. My immediate thought was pickle relish, honestly. Well, you know what, Brittany, that's so funny you said that because right before we got started, I thought it's odd that I picked that word, isn't it? Relish. But when you think of it, relish adds flavor, doesn't it? To hot dogs or hamburgers or whatever else we decide to put relish on, it adds flavor. And that's exactly what we're talking about here today, adding flavor through the opportunities that you have in different areas of your life. So as we go through today's session, what I'd like you to do is, as we go through each item, I want you to take a few seconds and actually think about where you can relish your opportunities for that particular item. Jemmy said how to be grateful for the opportunities that come your way. Exactly, Jemmy. And there are dozens of them, aren't there? In today's world, I think we get very wrapped up in the negative stuff, in the plodding along just to get to the next day. And it really doesn't help us a whole lot. Yvonne said everything we do has value, even if we don't ever want to repeat it. Absolutely. We value the lesson. We learn something, don't we? And Kathleen said insight into exploring more opportunities. Yes, I love your answers. Robin said, what more can I get out of life? Exactly. You're going to find out today, Robin, for you personally. This is not one of those overarching, everybody needs to learn the same thing kinds of things. I do some of those programs if we're talking about delegating and things like that. But for this is very self reflective. And that's what I want you to figure out today on your own. What more can you get out of life? And Lorelai said, embracing opportunities. Yes. Susan said, they're everywhere. Just look. Yeah. And that's what I was thinking when I put my own notes together when I developed this particular program was where can we look? Because sometimes we need to look. We're going to look at work today, of course, your career. There's a lot of opportunity there that we sometimes don't really consider, but there are other opportunities in our lives. Hyacinth said, I think the word sparkle just jumped out to me. We can all shine even in difficult times. Yep, that's exactly why we named it that. So I'm glad you got my intent, because once I did the program and I had everything ready and I sent the slides and so forth to Swiftland so they'd be ready for today, the thought occurred to me, what if they don't get my thought process? But y'all did. So I'm so glad to hear that. So let's take a look. Let's start looking at it. First of all, what does it mean? Besides pickle relish and adding flavor, it's pleasurable appreciation of anything, liking it. And as somebody said, it doesn't matter whether it's a difficult time, whether it's something we would rather not repeat. If it's pleasurable appreciation of what we've learned, if we've learned the lesson of what not to do, then we should like that lesson and relish that opportunity. Taylor, I'm going to let you address Susan's question since she wants to know what's going on with her silence. And the other definition is enjoyment of or delight in something that satisfies one's tastes, inclinations, or desires, which pretty much covers life, doesn't it? So that's what we're going to take a look at today. But then also the other part of that title was opportunity. And that's an appropriate or favorable time or occasion. So when is it appropriate to appreciate something? Pretty much. Yes, exactly, Stephanie. That's what we were talking about earlier. Somebody said they thought of pickle relish when they saw it. And I said, when I was thinking, relish flavors things. So when you're thinking about relishing opportunities, the opportunity is an appropriate or favorable time. And that's why you should relish it. It's a favorable junction of circumstances, if you will. And again, they are everywhere. And I think that it's no problem, Stephanie. I think that I hope that it's going to be very helpful for you today. And I hope that you all printed your handouts. And the reason I say that is a lot of the handout is blank today because it's about you. And I can't fill out your handouts because I don't know what you really need to focus on to relish your opportunities. So please do print them out or take note of the particular segments, if you will, that apply to you so that you can go back and look at this. Because guess what? Life is going to happen. February is going to come. Then it's going to be the end of the year, it seems like. And we need to really pay attention to what's going on in life so that we don't get our focus off onto the things that really aren't going to benefit us. They are not going to be opportunities for us. So thinking about that, let's start with the different areas. What areas do you think might we relish our opportunities? I mentioned the career opportunities that we have, the job opportunities that we have, those kinds of things. But what other areas might be ripe for relishing, if you will? Hobbies. Oh, yes. Relationships, clubs, personal life. And that, Lorelai, that opens up a whole big basket, doesn't it? Family, time with family and animals, skills, learning, all of the above. One of the comments I heard early on when the pandemic started and people were staying home more was that people were amazed at how they hadn't relished the opportunities with their families. They, of course, didn't word it that way. But before they had the opportunity to be forced to stay home with family, they hadn't really realized what they were missing. And so even though this is an awful time and we all wish we could do a rewind and not go through it, there have been opportunities throughout this, haven't there? Skills, learning, adventure. Yes. And that could cover everything we're talking about, couldn't it, Sharon? We could have adventures in all of those areas. So I love you all came up with some areas I hadn't even thought of. So we can do that on our own. Self-care is a huge opportunity. And knowing ourselves and knowing what we need for self-care. I talked to a fellow this morning on the phone, and he just called to check on me. And I've never met him before. He belongs to a church that I belong to. And he called to check on me. And he was talking about that he needed people and he loved being able to interact with people, and he didn't say it, but he relished the opportunity of being able to lift them out of some of the things they're dealing with during this difficult time. Travel, absolutely. Getting organized and decluttering. Yay, Stephanie, I did some of that over the holidays. Pat me on the back. And I relished that opportunity, but I didn't beat myself up either when I ran out of time over the holidays and didn't quite get everything done that I would have hoped to. I looked at what I got done, a big pile of stuff for the Humane Society in my garage last Thursday, and I thought, I got a lot more done really than I expected, maybe not as much as I would have liked, but I relished the opportunity to do that. Now, I may not have that opportunity for a while, but that's okay. I recognize it as being something positive. So I put career, relationships, like many of you, self-care, which could overlap with physical health. But there are opportunities for our physical health that we don't always give consideration to, aren't there? And I put emotional health, financial health. Wow, are there some opportunities there? I was talking to somebody yesterday, and she was talking about the fact that her vehicle uses a lot of gas, and that she had also noticed as she was working from home that her electric bill had gone up. And I said, but look at how much you save in gas, even though your electric bill went up because you're home all the time. So there are opportunities for us to look at that. I will tell you, when the pandemic first started, I feel like I'm financially healthy, so it wasn't a negative for me, but I'm pretty sure I did some retail therapy there for a couple of weeks. It wasn't an exorbitant amount or anything like that, but I had to pull back from that and see it as an opportunity to really kind of streamline what I was doing and what I was thinking. Even today, I was thinking, I'll go do a Walmart pickup later today. And then I looked at my pantry and I thought, you know what? I've got things I need to use up, and I'm just going to relish the opportunity, if you will, to go ahead and do that and feel really good about it. Not only will I save the money spending it this week, but I won't let anything go to waste. So it's that kind of thing. Living my values is a huge opportunity, isn't it? I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about that sometimes we get distracted by what we do for a living or any number of things, and we start to drift away from our values. And that isn't going to be emotionally healthy for us, is it? So that's an opportunity we have to make sure. And like I said, those people that were really relishing living with their families during the pandemic, we're starting to see that their values were maybe a little bit different than they had thought for a while. So those are all areas we're going to look at closer. This is really important for you to hear. We're going to talk about specific areas that we might be able to relish an opportunity. And you might add some, just like you already did in the chat. So I hope those of you who are looking at the chat have jotted down any that are meaningful to you. Because the more we focus on that stuff, the less we focus on the negative stuff. So in the following scenarios, I want you to think about how you can relish your opportunities. Not anybody else's or not what somebody else might experience, but what is there for you. Do you not think this little girl is relishing her opportunities? This just struck me as being the perfect picture for this particular slide. So let's start with the obvious. We're going to start with your careers, because that's pretty obvious, and I'm not sure why that popped up there as by itself there at the bottom. But the first one is advancement. So after each thing that I mentioned to you, I'm going to give you a few seconds to jot your own notes. Maybe relishing your opportunity for advancement is understanding that you don't want it. And you have an opportunity to make that choice, don't you? What a huge opportunity we have in life in all of the areas that we've mentioned. And that is the opportunity to make our own choices. Now, some of them we're kind of moved toward out of necessity, but there are so many things we can make choices about. And advancement is one of those things. I've known people in my past that got promotions, made more money, and then asked to be moved back to their previous position because it wasn't for them. And I love the fact that they took advantage of that opportunity. But as somebody said earlier, they learned from that first opportunity that that's not what they wanted to do. And so they took the opportunity to go back to what they were really happy with. So jot that down. And as you think of these things, go ahead and put something in the chat box if something comes to mind. I don't have, quote, an opportunity for an advancement in my work because I'm self-employed and I'm the only person here. But here's how I look at this particular item. I had opportunities to start working with the state library several years ago on Project Compass that was going on throughout the state. And I was selected for that. And that was an opportunity that I really relished because I traveled to 9 different areas to try to help libraries help their patrons interview and do resumes and things like that. So that was an opportunity in my mind for advancement. And that has led to other things. So that's what I'm talking about here. Does anybody have any thoughts about advancement in your career? And some of these, of course, may be personal enough that you don't want to share them, and that's perfectly okay. Training I need to get done to qualify. Yeah, and it's an opportunity, isn't it? Sometimes the opportunity really isn't timed the way we would like it to be, but if we want to do it, we need to do that. My niece is going to school right now to get her bachelor's degree, and I've been encouraging her for years to do that because she's in HR. And one of the requirements for her to advance, even if she doesn't advance in her own company, is she's going to need that degree, even though she's got the HR certificate that's really meaningful. A lot of places still want that degree. So, as Stephanie said, sometimes you have to do something to get to the opportunity, don't you? Keep that in mind. Sometimes you have to take your own steps. Eva said, let's take on some more responsibility. Show people what you're capable of, right, Eva? And Brittany said, learning from coworkers that have been in the field longer and letting them know that you're doing that, Brittany. That's an opportunity to build somebody up too, isn't it? Are you seeing some underlying things here that could happen for you? Not just you, Brittany, but I'm speaking to everybody now. But for Brittany, learning from coworkers and letting them know that you're learning from them and how much you appreciate that can be really meaningful for them. And, when coworkers have been in the field longer, they may be starting to feel like people are ignoring them or people are, I'm using air quotes here, putting them out to pasture. And so when Brittany makes it obvious that she wants to learn from them, that's a win-win. Hyacinth said volunteer to be involved in projects, and projects is one of the areas that I'm going to mention. Stephanie said making connections too to get your name out there. Yes, networking, letting people know you're available, all those kinds of things. I've got a note right now, Stephanie, on my notebook, my to-do list, that there's somebody that was mentioned to me the other day that might be interested in a particular project that I've done. And so I've got a note to contact that person. May or may not come out. Okay, but they're not going to get mad at me or anything. And I relish the opportunity to reach out and spread the word. Eva said learning from others is extremely beneficial. Yes, it doesn't matter if they've been there less time because we can learn just as much from people that have been there less time, can't we? Or the people that have been there longer or been in the field longer or have gone through things that you're now going through. And Sarah said, asking what your boss needs from you to qualify. Yes. And hopefully you've got the kind of boss that goes, wow, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. I mean, not that you'd want nobody to have asked them, but you want somebody that really appreciates you doing that. And Hyacinth said, become a member of professional organizations. There are lots of them. Yes, whole departments. You can learn from others and whole departments and individuals and people in other libraries. Training, several of you already mentioned. But there are lots of, besides webinars through your MLC, Swiftland, or if you're from somewhere else through however you got here, besides those kinds of webinars, there are massive open, I'm going to get this wrong, Stephanie, and you probably know it by heart, online courses, massive open online courses, MOOCs. Yeah, I know, thank you, Ruben. I know the acronym, but I couldn't remember exactly what it stood for. But anyway, a lot of them are free and you can learn about anything you want to learn about. Let's say you learned about a little bit about astrology or astronomy, and now you have an opportunity, relishing that opportunity, to present a little mini program for your library. And yes, we hope it's face-to-face, but if it's not, you could do the same thing online, couldn't you? We're finding a lot of ways to do things online that we would rather not do. Yeah, Coursera, and I think is it edX, EDX? There are some really good ones out there, but just look for MOOC and it will pull up some things, and it will overwhelm you, to be honest. It has me in the past, but I've taken a couple of those classes just to learn more about my own work and things like that. So that's an opportunity we can think about. And the next one was projects. which is listed there for you. I don't know why I loaded that the projects popped up and number 3 didn't pop up. But thinking about that, as I mentioned, I had the chance to work on Project Compass, and I do believe that that opportunity and my throwing myself wholeheartedly into that led to me being asked to be a or I put in a proposal and I was selected to be a facilitator for the Sunshine State Library Leadership Institute. And then that led to me being asked to be a facilitator for the Next Level Library Leadership Institute that we just started this 2 weeks ago, I think it was, or just maybe last week. And that's for graduates of SILI, as we call it. So all of those things were projects and advancement, and they kind of all overlap. But if we back away from them, what other windows might have opened that we didn't get the opportunity to experience because we were scared? I'll tell you, for Project Compass, that was a nationwide program. And when the state called me to ask me if I would be interested, they said, you'll go to North Carolina for training. And I went, oh my gosh, it's going to be people from all over the United States. Am I really ready for this? Do I know what I'm talking about? Those kinds of things. And I could have stopped that opportunity. I could have just said my calendar's full, which it was fairly busy at the time, but I just plugged in dates around it so that I was able to do it. So think about projects. What projects might you, and go beyond what you're currently working on. What projects have you seen in the library that you'd like to be a part of, that you have an opportunity to maybe volunteer for or ask how you can help? What projects do you think need to be done at the library that haven't even been started? Lorelei said, projects can also lead you outside your role and give you the opportunity to try something different. Being on committees, absolutely. And you learn from that, and it just builds on itself, doesn't it? And for anybody who suffers from imposter syndrome, thinking, when are they going to find out I don't know what I'm talking about? The more you relish your opportunities, the more you tamp down imposter syndrome, because you start to recognize that, no, I'm living my best life because I'm taking advantage of these opportunities. Ruben said, social services for my fellow veterans. Yes, please, please. I just don't think there's ever enough done in that area, whatever it may be. So yeah, I'm going to vote for that one, Ruben. There's nothing I can do to help you, but I'm certainly going to vote for it. So more opportunities. Look at the things that you've already put into the chat box that you are relishing the idea of. Now, of course, I have to stop for a moment and say, unless you take action when you leave today, nothing changes. And I don't want you to try to take action on everything you made notes on, because you will just get flustered, you will be overwhelmed, and all of a sudden you're thinking this was not such a good idea. So pick the one thing that makes your heart pound, that gets you excited. I love learning, which is why I love what I do. I took an assessment in a book called Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham several years ago, and wasn't surprised, but just affirmed by the fact that the thing I scored highest on was learning, lifelong learner. That was one of my strengths. So all of these things can help you, but none of them will help you if you don't do anything when you leave here today. You all know I challenge you every time we have a webinar to do that. So in careers, there might be just tasks. What opportunity do you have for a task that needs to be done in the library that really maybe doesn't, what's that old saying, float your boat, or doesn't get you your heart pounding, but you know it needs to be done, and you'd like to relish the opportunity to help, maybe help your director or help your boss or help your coworkers without being asked? Can you think of a task that maybe if you just stepped in, people would appreciate it, or you would learn something new, or you would at least show that you want to be a part of the team and be valuable? What task is there an opportunity for in your environment? Shelf reading always. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, if things are a little slow, or maybe you're bored with what you're currently working on, you just take a break and you help with a task. But that's an opportunity. Again, here's the underlying current of that you become a more valuable member of the team. And none of this is meant for you to be manipulative. But don't you think if somebody walked up to you and said, Sarah, oh, thank you, Stephanie. I love when you do that. So thank you for putting that in there. I hadn't even thought that I was going to mention that today. So I appreciate you putting that in there. It's an excellent book. your coworkers, your director, anybody that sees you stepping up to the plate to help with something that just nobody really wants to do, or there aren't enough hands on deck to do it the way it needs to be done or as timely as it needs to be done. You're appreciated then. You become a more valuable member of that team. And the more valuable you become, the tighter knit your group becomes. So tasks, just simple tasks, can be something that could be helpful. Being a mentor. I'm going to go back one. The task. A couple of days ago, I was working with another client in another state, and she was asking, they use Zoom, and I use that for a couple of my clients. And she was saying, so we did a test because I'm going to do a program for them next week, and they just switched from GoToMeeting. So she said, I want to make sure Zoom works for you with me and da da da, even though I already use it. And I said, great. So we did the test. And she said, why does your screen appear like this for me? And how do you get the chat box up? Because my director can't get her chat box to come up. And so I said, here's what I do. And I could see her frantically writing. And I said, I'll go through the steps after we're done today and I'll send them to you. So I did. After I hung up, it was just a simple task. I went back through the little steps that I take to get to where I needed to be and typed them up for her and sent them to her. And it's not going to get me any more work or anything like that. It made me feel good though. Don't you, when you relish your opportunities like that, doesn't that make you feel good too? Cleaning up common areas, absolutely. And it makes common area work easier. Again, you're respected because you're part of the team. You don't feel like you're too good to work on those kinds of things. That's all very helpful in a work environment. And then we go on to being a mentor. And you don't have to use the term mentor, but think of someone right now that you could mentor in some way. In a sense, I felt like I mentored my client the other day because she was not familiar enough with Zoom to really figure out the issue they were having. And I'm certainly technologically challenged. Let me just put that right out there. But I've been using Zoom for a couple of years now, or however long it's been so popular. And I knew I could probably help her. So I kind of felt like I mentored her a bit, even though she's my client. So think of somebody you could be a mentor to, and you don't have to have formal lunches and those kinds of things, but who do you see in your environment that might be a little unsure, that might lack a little bit of self-confidence, that you could offer to help? Eva says, when training anyone new, I always say, ask me 1,000,000 times. Exactly. And it's funny when people ask, don't you learn it more deeply, Eva, whatever you're sharing? And sometimes maybe even a different idea comes up because they've asked you for the 917,322nd time. So something different actually pops to mind at that point. So that's an opportunity. But think of somebody you can be a mentor to and jot down their name. Now, it may turn out that they don't really want a mentor, that they don't really want anybody to know there are areas they need help with. And that's okay too. That's their right, isn't it? So it's not that we're going to push this on anyone. It's going to be that we offer because that gives us so many opportunities. And being mentored. I talked to somebody the other day and I said, I have a question for you. And I don't want you to think of us in a business relationship. I want you to answer this question from a friend because I needed mentoring. I had a question that there really was no way I could get the answer on my own without simply asking somebody. And this person was very willing to share that information with me. So being mentored, who do you see around you that could mentor you and help you move forward in any of these areas? Type a name or an association of a person that you can think of. Some of my clients, like I said, are mentors for me. Sarah says, sometimes we discover when we learn how another person does something new, we figure out a way to review and increase our workflow. Exactly. Yes, Swiftland. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I hope I'm helpful. Fellow branch managers, absolutely, Ruben. Because, when you get to a certain level, people think you're supposed to know everything, right? And we don't. We never will. We never can. And it's okay. But if you let people know and you start to share, it's no big deal. Kathleen said supervisor. Yeah. And they would much rather you come up to them and say, here's an area I don't think I'm familiar with. and I'd like to learn more about it than just stumble along and them have to give you corrective counseling because you're not doing it well. Swiftland staff, absolutely. We can learn a lot pretty much from everybody around us, I'm thinking. So that's another area, and we're on the top of page 2 right now. So I think many of you are getting some notes here of ways you can relish your opportunities when you leave here today. So the next segment is being creative. Now this is funny because I don't think I actually did the slide like that. Maybe I did. I have to look now. It's just, nope, I didn't. The word creative, when I did it, was actually in one of those curlicued fonts that says it's a real font, but Adobe loads slides funny. So I look at this and I think, I kind of like that way because it is creative, isn't it? So what's an area where you can relish your opportunity to be creative? And it doesn't have to be a hobby. What's an area you can be creative in and relish the opportunity to do so? I have that opportunity every time I develop a program. There are often some guidelines. For instance, somebody will say, will you do a conference talk for us? And I often ask, what are some of the areas, why are they asking for this particular topic? What are some of the areas they're dealing with? And when they give me that, then I get to be creative. Putting outfits together, even though I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. And I've gotten away from that a little bit, Stephanie, as I haven't been traveling as much. So the other day I had a meeting, and it was an important meeting to me, if you will. And I put on one of my pretty tops with this gorgeous blue and green and all kinds of colors scarf with it and my earrings. And it was just a phone Zoom kind of a conference, but it did make me feel good about being creative. Ruben says writing, absolutely. And nobody can write or will write the same words as you, will they? So you get to be creative with that. Lorelai said, I use the common whiteboard in our department to post riddles or word puzzles. Yeah, let everybody be creative. We're hearing more and more how we need to keep our brains active. Brittany said, the newsletter articles I write for work, I made a social media crossword puzzle post, so that'll be fun when it goes live. Yes, yes. Relish those opportunities. Let those opportunities feed your brain to create new opportunities. Kathleen said creating marketing event posters and slideshows. It can be really fun, can't it? We can actually get lost in that, which is a good thing for creativity. And Sarah said creating webinars. Yes. And sometimes it's more of a challenge than others, depending on the topic or whatever. Robin said starting your own recipe. I love that. I am one of those people, Robin, that just kind of goes, this might taste good. And I throw something in there and somebody will say, how did you make that? And I'll say, I don't know. I couldn't duplicate it again if I tried. Yvonne said, I write curriculum for my friends' kids and creative lessons are needed. Yes, creativity is really needed in that area to keep their attention and to make it engaging and to make sure they absorb it, right? Because if it's not creative, they may spout it back to you in the moment, but they're not really going to absorb it. Creating events and slideshows. Event slideshows, yeah, absolutely. All of the above. So there are lots of opportunities for us to relish when we're thinking about being creative. That was a nice little trick. Number 8 says using currently unused talents and skills. Okay, step back for a minute and think of something that you're pretty sure you're fairly competent at, maybe even good at it, that you are not using. What opportunities do you have in those areas? What talents and skills are you not using? Somebody told me once that they considered me a motivational speaker, even though I'm technically a trainer and facilitator. So I have a client that asked me to do a presentation at a conference for them, and they didn't really want to do handouts or fill in the blanks or anything like that because it wasn't so much as a learning process as it was a lift them up kind of a process. And I have had fun being creative in that opportunity. It's a little scary because it's a lot of responsibility, but I'm trusting that whoever told me that they thought I was motivational knew what they were talking about and that I'll be able to lift them up in that process. Brittany said, there's not much day-to-day use in my day job for ancient Greek and Latin translation. No, maybe you could find some place to help with that though, Brittany. Ruben said problem solving. Maybe you don't get to use that skill very often, but maybe you can look around and try to help somebody else. And Amy said organizing information when creating a flyer for a program. There you go. That you don't get to use as often as you'd like. So reach out and try to find ways that you can incorporate some of those talents and skills that really aren't being used to their utmost currently. And there's never a time in life where we're doing all of these exactly as they should and in the percentages they should be done. But I really believe that even when there's not a pandemic, life goes by and we get into, I'll call it a comfortable routine, also known as a rut. And we forget to look at those opportunities, don't we? Robin said multitasking. Organizing the information when creating a flyer for a program, Amy said. So when life is just moving along and you're doing just fine, it still is very beneficial to you, even to your emotional health, for you to step back and say, where am I missing the opportunities? What could be helpful for somebody else or for me that I haven't really seen on my radar because I've been busy living life? Because we all are, right? That's what happens. That's why we miss our opportunities. We're living life. An opportunity for responsibility. I think Eva might be the one that said, I could take more responsibility. But here's the thing, and here's one of the reasons we don't often do that. It requires risk, doesn't it? Because what if it's not perfect? Guess what? It probably won't be. Very few things in my life come out perfectly the way I was hoping they would. Sometimes I'll leave something out that I meant to tell somebody or whatever, and somebody will look at me and say, but nobody knew what you were going to say, so it's not even noticeable to them. But an opportunity for responsibility. Think about where you can apply your skills and talents, like we talked about, your creativity or whatever, to take on more responsibility. That's kind of rare right now. What I hear from not just library folks, although those are the only groups I work with, but I talk to friends and family members, and what I'm hearing from everybody is the responsibility is thrust upon them. And so it's more of a burden than it is an opportunity at that point. So look for opportunities to take on that responsibility and show that you can do it, or that you would at least like to try. Most people will give you credit just for trying. So it usually ends up a win-win, even if it wasn't your cup of tea. You gave it a shot, you learned something from it, and now you can move on. An opportunity for more authority. That might not even mean a promotion. It might not even mean advancement, but maybe more authority in a certain area. Maybe you're the person they call if somebody comes in that's unruly or whatever, if that's something that you're really good at. Something happened to me this morning that just totally caught me off guard and made me run a little bit late in my schedule today. But I was sitting here at my desk in front of my computer, and at the very end of my street, which is only 2 doors down from me, they had torn up the road yesterday and they were going to repave it today, and they were working on that. And all of a sudden, there were maybe 5, 6, 8 people out there. I heard this screaming and I almost wrenched my neck to see, oh my gosh, does somebody need help? And I think one of the pieces of equipment had run over somebody. And it looked like it had maybe, I'm hoping, because it was far enough away I couldn't see, had broken a leg or something. Because when the ambulance came, it looked like that's what they were using. But what I saw, I really, and it's one of those things where I was really concerned about them and hoping everybody was okay and hoping the person that hit him was okay as well. But what I saw was a couple of people, and they may have been supervisors, they may not have been. One person was just a walker down the street, a neighbor, and she and her husband were walking down the street, and she immediately jumped in, knelt down on the ground, and started stroking this fellow's forehead. The pain must have been excruciating. And that's a form of authority, isn't it? She didn't take time to ask anybody that was working there if it was okay to do that. She just took over. And then I saw a couple of the other people. I could tell one was making a 911 call. Somebody else went and got a coat. People were taking authority to make sure things got handled right. So as weird as that sounds, that's kind of how I relate that. that sometimes you can step up and take authority, and sometimes it needs to be in the moment, and then sometimes you also can volunteer for that. So regarding your career, we finished the notes on opportunities in our career, and you came up with several more that I hadn't even noted. What kind of notes can you make to yourself regarding your career now that we've gone through that particular segment? I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. There are a couple lines in the middle of page 2 for you to complete. So hopefully you came up with something if you had that time to reflect on that, and you can do better. Exactly. We can always do better, can't we? But hopefully you came up with something that's very personal to you in a way that your career will become richer for you. Not monetarily necessarily, not even with more authority necessarily, responsibility, but something that will make it not so much of a routine as it is that you get up and instead of saying, I have to go to work today, you say, I get to go to work today. Yvonne said, one of my favorite quotes is good here. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And then beyond, and I'm going to add to that, Yvonne. I always do those kinds of things. I'm going to say, and be honest with yourself. Because a lot of people will convince themselves that they don't have the knowledge or the skills to move forward. They can't do this or whatever. And a lot of times that may be true, but sometimes it's just a big old excuse, isn't it? So I'm going to add on to that. Be honest with yourself about taking advantage of those opportunities. So the next segment is looking at relationships. Some of you mentioned relationships earlier when I asked you about areas that we might want to look at. So on page 2, there's a whole list, and I'll go through them here on the slides as well in case you didn't print off your handouts. But I want you to think about what are the opportunities in these relationships. The first one is your coworkers. We included some things right in your career segment that would be helpful in relishing your opportunity for relationship with your coworkers. So, okay, now let me get really pushy. And I don't want you to put any names in the chat box, but here's my question. Is there anybody you work with that you just don't feel a connection with? Just type yes or no. So some of us, yeah, I think that's very natural, don't you? I work by myself and sometimes I don't feel connection. So yes, absolutely. Okay, here's how I'm going to push your buttons today. I want you to find a way to connect with them. Not become BFF. You don't have to become their best friend. You don't even have to hang out with them on a regular basis. But what could you do as an opportunity to relish that relationship and just make it a little kinder, a little more compassionate, a little more caring? Just pushing your buttons here. You know I do that all the time. Ask work-related questions. Talk about their interests. We're very egocentric, aren't we, Ruben? We talk about ourselves. That's our favorite subject for most human beings. I mean, it's just natural. It's not anything to feel bad about. It's just who we are. And Susan said, usually they're good at something, so relish that skill. Absolutely. What do they bring to the table? Maybe they are just mired in the details. And you're thinking, let's move on and make a decision. But you know what? I bet if you looked really close, there are times when those details save you or save your organization. Not save the organization as a whole, but save a mistake, save doing something that wouldn't be as effective or whatever. So you relish that because they've probably been belittled about it all their lives. Maybe they only see the big picture and they forget the details. You need somebody to see the big picture. So I love that, Susan. They're good at something. It might be unrelated to work. It might be, and if it's well known, that they take care of an elderly parent or something like that. And you could comment on that. I really respect you for taking care of your mom so well. That's all. Doesn't have to be a big discussion. Initiate that conversation. Exactly, Kathleen. Because there's a possibility, not always, but if you aren't quite in sync with them, maybe somebody else isn't either, and they might feel a little bit out of the loop. Appreciate what they do. Absolutely. Appreciate it. Ask for their input. Ruben said, use some of their ideas and give them credit. Make sure people know where those ideas came from. I got to tell you, folks, guess what happens when you do any of the above? You feel good because you lifted someone else. And pretty much all of the above can be applied to your supervisor and your employees, can't it? How cool is that? That you can make a difference in somebody's life by something as simple as what you've typed into the chat box. We have to make the effort, and sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. If I've never asked questions of my coworkers, or I've never commented on what they're good at, or initiated a conversation, it might be a little awkward the first time I do that, right? It gets easier. And as I said, you may feel a little uncomfortable in the moment, but you'll feel good about it after you do it because they need to hear from you as well. The next group is patrons, other departments, upper management, siblings, anything you can think of with any of those groups. What opportunities do you have with them regarding relationships? I only have one sibling left. My sister died 2 years ago. It'll be 3 years actually in a couple months. And my brother has never been a communicator. Drives me crazy. But I made the decision once our sister died. He's in Ohio. I'm in Florida. She was in Ohio. He was very good about going and when she was sick at different times in her life and letting her know that he was there for her and those kinds of things. So I've just made the decision myself. He has only called me once in the 15 years I've lived in Florida, and that was the day before my sister died to tell me his wife had died. So it's not that we're estranged or anything like that. He's just that way, and he's very close to his in-laws, and I love that because he's got family he can be with. But I've just made the decision that I call at least twice a year and sometimes 3 or 4 times a year. I've called him twice during the pandemic because I know he's not behaving and I need to shake him up a little bit sometimes. So, that's the way I can relish that opportunity because guess what? My sister's gone now and I have an opportunity to make that connection with my brother before he's gone too. Or maybe I'm gone first. I don't know. So, patrons, listen to their concerns and really listen, right, Ruben? Make sure they know that you're hearing them. Block out everything else. Make eye contact. Summarize what they've said and hear what's underneath what they've said sometimes. Margie said, remember what interest a particular patron has and showing them a book that pertains to that interest. People are so touched by that, Margie. Because in today's world, nobody remembers anything about us. This fellow that called to check on me from my church this morning, which stunned me. It was just, we had a long conversation. And at the end, he said, I love you. And I've never even met you. And he's young enough to be my son, and it wasn't anything like that. It was just the idea that we had so much in common. We had such a good time talking to each other. It lifted my whole day just because he took the time to do that. He relished that opportunity and he absolutely did. Griselda said, have conversations. How's your day? Connect with something they shared with you. If you know, maybe if they ever get to go on vacation again, if you know they went on vacation or they visited their grandkids or whatever, how did that go? Did you have a good time? Did you get to go to the soccer game? Whatever it is. People are just really touched by that. And you may make their whole month because in today's society, especially with social media and things, there's not as much personal contact. It's that old half joke that goes around that somebody has 1,000 friends and nobody really knows them. And you can be a part of making sure there's somebody that knows them. So in that group, that's how we're going to handle it. How about your significant other, your children, your parents, your friends? Think of one thing very specifically in this group, because this is very personal, that you could do to relish a relationship. Specific. That you would be willing to actually do when you leave here today. It doesn't have to be each one of them. I hope at some point you go through the worksheet and actually fill in something for each one of them. Because after all, this group right here is who really counts, right? These are the people who really count in my mind, and our siblings. I see several of you typing, so I hope you're thinking this through. It takes intentionality, doesn't it? You don't relish an opportunity if you haven't been intentional about it. Well, this is particularly important, being intentional when you're talking about relationships on a personal level. Hyacinth said, ask what was one good thing that happened today. Yeah, it turns everybody, not just how was your day, oh, that Eeyore kind of thing. What was one good thing that happened today? And you can end up in a discussion of some really deep things, can't you, Hyacinth? Just asking that. The next question might be, so tell me why that made you feel so good. What made you happy about that? All of a sudden you get to know a person that you've known them before, but maybe you've, gotten busy. Life has happened. Make time for them. Huge, isn't it? And for only them, right, Sarah? Not the multitasking, not the having 14 things going on at once, not checking your phone while you're talking to them. Make time for them. It doesn't have to be hours. It just needs to be quality time. We've heard that for eons. Griselda said celebrate their achievements, their accomplishments, their birthdays, their anniversaries. Yes. And then make it all about them, right? And Margie said, take a golf lesson from a professional so my husband and I can play a round of golf together. I love that. I love that, Margie. You go. I hope you do that. Stephanie said, do a Zoom coffee date. Absolutely. Sit there and have your cup of coffee and have a chat. I'm much more comfortable with doing that kind of thing now. It of course is not as good as in person, and in some ways it feels almost intrusive because of the technology involved, but it's a way to connect right now. Give parents a call to let them know you're thinking about them. So important right now. Stephanie said, my husband and I do skeet shooting. Great social distancing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ruben said, give my wife a day off from responsibilities that I could handle. Yes, exactly. Let her know that you're thinking solely of her. And that's why you're doing this with no expectation of anything in return. It's just about her. Because that's an opportunity to grow that relationship, isn't it? Hyacinth said, in addition to what Griselda said, you never forget their special days. Exactly. Sarah said, since last year, even friends who live across the country reconnected through FaceTime. Good. And sometimes you need to be the friend that's making that effort, don't you? So don't forget, even though they're good at reaching out, some people are better than others. I emailed a friend of mine the other day, haven't seen him for a couple of years now because I was busy with travel and then the pandemic hit and I just won't risk my health or theirs. And I emailed her the other day. She's having some health problems. She had some biopsies, and I had made a note to check with her. And I emailed and I said, have you found anything on your biopsies? And she said, she gave me all of this litany of what she and her husband are going through right now. And she said, thank you for checking in. She said, with everything that's happened, it seems nobody checks in anymore. And I thought, gosh, you'd think now everybody would be checking in. But she's a very social butterfly kind of person, having cards 3 times a week and this kind of thing. And she doesn't get to do that, so she feels like she's been left out. So now I wrote down on a list this morning all of their appointments and he's had cancer 3 times and she's had some issues. And so I wrote down the appointments they've got coming up so that I can check afterwards and let them know I'm thinking about them. Makes me feel good too. Margie said, who doesn't love receiving a letter through snail mail? Yes. I wrote a letter. This is going to be weird. I love that you said that, Margie. At Christmas time, I got a card from somebody that used to do business and ended up being a good friend of my husband's. And my husband's been gone for almost 4 years. And this fellow sent me a card and he wrote at the bottom, I so enjoyed knowing Guy. And I wrote him a letter. I typed it, but I sent it in the mail. And I said, this will be the weirdest letter you ever got because I just want to thank you for remembering Guy because so many people act like I should have forgotten him by now. And I didn't hear back from him. I didn't expect to. I'll probably get another Christmas card next year, and that's great. But the fact that he was willing to say that after 4 years, I think I know it impressed me, just that one statement on the bottom of his card. And I think me taking the time to send that letter to him probably made a difference as well. So I agree, Margie. People love that. So just make yourself some notes, and what are you going to do about relationships so that you keep me moving forward in that area? Opportunities to relish my physical health. Pick one. What are you going to do? I broke 2 toes in 4 months, and boy, was that a good excuse to stay off the treadmill. But I knew as soon as I healed, I had to get back on there. It's an opportunity. A lot of people can't get on a treadmill. A lot of people don't have the energy, don't have the physical ability, don't have a treadmill, whatever it might be. And I relish the opportunity to do that. Do I love exercising? No. Just going to be blunt about it. But I like the way it makes me feel. So pick one of those. What can you do to relish the opportunity to take care of one of those areas? There's a line beside each one of them on your handouts for you to make your own notes. And feel free to type it in the chat box. It makes a little bit of a commitment when you put it in the chat box, doesn't it? Not something you're currently doing. How can you relish an opportunity to keep doing it, or do even better, or start doing it? I got my NutriBullet out a week or so ago, and I've used it about 3 times now. I used to love it, but I was gaining weight because I was doing mostly fruit, and there's a lot of sugar in that. So now I've tempered that down a bit, and I'm using it for different things, and I know that it's good for my health. Every chance for a nap, it's good for you, isn't it? As long as you're not sleep deprived and there's not a physical reason for it, naps can be good for you. Sarah said instead of going to the gym this year, the new resolution was to meal plan, and that helps financially. Absolutely. And can keep you healthy. Make sure you're paying attention to this particular area. It's hard to relish the other areas of opportunity that we talked about if we're not taking care of our health, right? So be real careful about this area. Exercise at least twice a day. Wow, Robin, I'm impressed. I only do once a day. I almost used the accident outside this morning that got me off track to not get on the treadmill. And I thought, no, you don't, girl. You've got enough time to get on the treadmill. So I did. I didn't stay on quite as long, but I got on there. Sharon said, carrying weights while walking for strength training. Absolutely. And Margie said, I receive an organic veggie box every week and make sure I use all the contents before the next week. And that makes for some interesting meals. Yes, I love that. Is that from a co-op or something, Margie? Because I know there are a lot of those that we can join. Some of us might be interested in where you're getting that from. Warden Farms in Punta Gorda. Okay, good, good. Yeah, great idea. Don't forget to drink your water, folks. Opportunities to relish your emotional health. This is huge. What are your inputs? Are you watching too much news? Are you watching violent movies? Are you on social media too much, getting depressed? Those are your inputs. How can you relish your opportunity to take care of your emotional health by paying attention to these things? Your own thoughts, your personal responsibility for anything we've talked about today. That's on you, isn't it? I can't make you do any of this. Your own actions come into play here. And I know we're wrapping up. This, to me, is one where you could take just this segment and spend 10, 15 minutes and make changes in your life. Read something you enjoy. Yes, fiction, biographies, something uplifting. Restart writing in a journal. I do that all the time, Lorelai. You've been in enough of my programs. I've probably mentioned it. You've probably heard it 7 times. It processes my emotions, and then I can look back and see what was going on and see how they lifted. Play Candy Crush. Yeah. Do whatever you need to do to take care of your emotional health. Start or restart a creative hobby. Absolutely. Another one that's very important, because these are the kinds of things, these personal things are the kinds of things that can cast a pall over all the things we talked about at the beginning. So what are you doing to relish your financial health? Are you being careful about debt and budgeting and saving and retirement and giving, or whatever is important to you in your life? I will highly recommend Dave Ramsey if you need any help in that area. Financial Peace University. He has a podcast. I don't see it a lot anymore. I used to watch it while I was on the treadmill, and I read now because a lot of it's similar to what I've heard before, and a lot of it doesn't apply anymore. But he has a psychologist on there now. He has a guy that talks about jobs. Um, just a lot of good information. So Dave Ramsey or Clark Howard's the how to save money guy, the best places to buy this or that or whatever. But it's an area that can really stifle you in your other areas of opportunity. So just be careful about that one. And remember what I said about your choices. That's where you can really relish your opportunities, because all of the, what, dozens of things we've talked about so far, a couple dozen anyway, the areas that you could relish your opportunities, you have choices in all of those areas, don't you? But you have to make the choice, and you have to decide to do something about it. The last one is, how are you going to live your values? I wrote on mine, be a lifelong learner. And because of that, I hope to keep doing what I'm doing for a long, long time. That's part of my value system. So know what your values are and how you're going to live them. So what opportunity have you chosen to relish? Would you type that into the chat box, please? What opportunity have you chosen out of all the ones we've talked about today to relish, and what are you going to do that? It's going to have to be something you've never done before, isn't it? For you to actually relish that opportunity. Appreciate people. And Susan, I'm going to challenge you. You don't have to type it into the chat, but I want you to come up with a list of 2 or 3 that you can start with. And that moves you forward, doesn't it? And investing in myself, whatever that might look like, training, courses, being creative, taking time for yourself. Lorelai said, my hobby, going to finish the room so I can set up my stuff. Yeah. It's definitely relationships, training, creativity, self-care, lots of them good. Vaughn said, being more available and not so in myself. And Robin said, going back to school. Good for you. What opportunities are in this chat box today? Retirement, relocate to my hometown. I'm looking at that, Kathleen. It's not my hometown, but I'm looking at relocating. My niece happens to be about 2.5 hours away from me, and she's going to be buying a home in the next 6 months. And she and her husband both actually really want me to move closer to them. So we'll see. I don't know that will happen, but we'll see. Checking on investments. Yeah, making sure you're being smart there. Start writing letters again. Good, Sarah. I love that. Or cards. Just find really pretty blank cards and write a short note inside. The letter, might be too much to handle or whatever. After you've done a few of them, and there's some beautiful, inexpensive cards out there that you can just drop somebody a note that you're thinking of them. I know I'm over by a minute. Thank you for attending today. I hope you go and relish your opportunities, and you always have my email address. If there's any way I can help you do that, drop me an email. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me relish my opportunity of working with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Linda, for an informative webinar this afternoon. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, we ask that you join us on February 18th for Linda Bruno's next webinar, Sparkle, Knowledge is Power. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Debbie.